So what would an amendment look like that helps prevent money being an influence in politics?
So I started a group called Wolfpack.
Nice
And
name.
thank you, wolf-pack.com. And the reason why I named it Wolfpack is because everyone in Washington I knew would hate that name. It's a populist name, and everybody in Washington snickers. Like, no, you're supposed to name it Americans for America and just trick people, etc. No. Wolfpack means we're coming for you. Okay, we're not coming for you in a weirdo, physical, or violent way. We're coming for you in a democratic way. Okay, so we're gonna go to those state houses. We're gonna get them to propose a convention, and we did it in 5 states. But then the Democratic Party started beating us back. We'll get to that, and so we are going to overturn your apple cart. And we're going to put the American people back in charge. So what does the amendment say? Number one, a lot of people will have different opinions on what it should say, and that's what you sort out in a convention. So, for example, one of the things that conservatives can propose, which makes sense, is term limits. Because the reason why these super old politicians are in charge is because they provide a return on investment. So if you give to Biden, Pelosi, or McConnell, they're going to deliver for you. They love that return on investment. They don't want to risk it on a new guy. The new guy might have principles, or, might want to actually do a little bit for his voters, boo. Whereas these old, and every corrupt system has these old guys hanging around that help maintain power, etc. So my particular proposal in the amendments would be a couple of things. One is end private financing of elections. So if you're a business person, you're a capitalist, you know this with absolute certainty. If somebody signs your check, that's the person you work for, right? So if private interests are funding politicians, the politicians will serve private interests. And then you're going to get into a fight like Elon did in New Jersey, where the car dealerships and Tesla are getting into an auction. Can I hear 100,000? No, a million, 2 million, 3 million, right? And now you got to go bribe the government official. That's called a campaign contribution. And this is a terrible system, right? And the private financing, go to complete public financing of elections. That's when the conservatives, because they've been propagandized by corporate media. Yes, mainstream media got into your head too, and right-wing media got into your head too. And right-wing media also financed by a lot of this corrupt interest. And so they tell you, oh, you don't want to publicly finance. Oh my God, you'd be spending like $1 billion on politicians. Brother, they're spending trillions of dollars of your money because they're financed by the guys that they're giving all of your money to.
So can you educate me? Does that prevent something like Citizen United? So like super PACs are all gone in this case. So
gone.
So indirect funding is also
indirect funding's gone. Direct funding's gone. You have to set up some thresholds. Not everybody can just get money to run. You have to prove that you have some sort of popular support. So signature gathering. You would still allow for small money donations, like up to $100, something along those lines.
That's not 5,000 or whatever it is now.
Yeah, I think 5,000 is too high, but those are fine debates. Yeah, but you basically want to create an incentive. Everything is about incentives and disincentives. Again, capitalists realize this better than anyone else, right? So you want to set up an incentive to serve your voters, not your donors. So if you take away private donors, well, there goes that incentive, and that's gigantic, right? And then if you set up small grassroots funding as a way to get past the threshold to get the funding to run an election, well, then good, because then you're serving small donors, which are generally voters, right? So that's what you want. And ending private financing is critical. But the second thing is ending corporate personhood. So this is where you get into a lot of fights, because you have 2 reasons. One is some folks have a principled position against it, and they say, well, I mean, the Sierra Club is technically a corporation. ACLU is technically a corporation. And so if you end corporate personhood, then that could endanger their existence, right? No, it doesn't endanger their existence at all, right? So it doesn't endanger GM or GE's existence. It doesn't endanger anybody's existence. Corporations exist. We're not trying to take them away. I would never do that, right? That's not smart. That's not workable, etc. We're just saying they don't have constitutional rights. So they have the rights that we give them. And by the way, read the Founding Fathers. This is also in my book. They hated corporations. The American Revolution was partly against the British East India Company. And so the Tea Party in Boston was against that corporation. They threw their tea overboard. It was not against the British monarchy. And so and all the founding fathers warned us over and over again, watch out for corporations, okay? Because once they form, they will amass money and power and look to kill off democracy. And they were totally right. That's exactly what happened. And so it's not that you don't have them, it's that you, through democratic capitalism, you limit their power. You can give them a bunch of rights. You say, hey, you have a right to exist, you have a right to do this, this, and this, okay? But you do not have constitutional rights of a citizen. And so you don't have the right to speak to a politician by giving them $1 billion.
And you believe that the people will be able to find the right policies to regulate and tax the corporations such that capitalism can flourish still.
Yes. You know why? Because I'm a real populist and I believe in the people. So I drive the establishment crazy because they don't believe in the people. They think, oh, Jake, have you seen MAGA? Have you seen these guys? Have you seen the radicals on the left? We're so much smarter. Well, you know how many Ivy League degrees we have, right? And we know what we're doing. No, you don't. No, everybody to some degree looks out for their own interests, right? Why I like capitalism and why I love democracy is because it's the wisdom of the crowd. And so in the long run, the crowd is right. Oftentimes in the short term, we're wrong, okay? But the wisdom of the crowd in the long run is much, much better than the elites that run things. The elites say, well, we're so smart and educated, so we're going to know better what's good for you. No, brother, you're going to know what's better for you. And so here's something that a lot of people get wrong on the populist left and right. They think, oh, those guys are evil. They're not evil. I've met them. I worked at MSNBC. I worked on cable. I went to Wharton, Columbia Law. I know a lot of those guys. And so they're not at all evil. They don't even know that they're mainly serving their own interests. They just naturally do it, right? And so they think the carried interest loophole makes a lot of sense, right? They think corporate tax cuts makes a lot of sense. You not getting higher wages, you not having health care makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make any goddamn sense, but they get themselves to believe it. And that's another portion of the invisible hand on the market.
So there's problems with every path. So the elite, like you mentioned, can be corrupted by greed, by power, and so on. But the crowd, I agree with you, by the way, about the wisdom of the crowd versus the wisdom of the elite. But the crowd can be captured by a charismatic leader. So the problem with populism, and I'm probably a populist myself, the problem with populism is it can be and has been throughout history captured by bad people.
But if you say to me, trust the elites or trust the people, I'm going to trust the people every single time.
Well, that's why you're such an interesting, I don't want to say contradiction, but there's a tension that creates the balance. So to me, in the way you're speaking might result in hurting capitalism. So it's easy in fighting corporatism to hurt companies. So to go too far the other way.
Yeah, of course.
And so like when you talked about corporate tax, so what's the magic number for the corporate tax? Because if it's too high, like companies leave. Right?
Yeah. Companies have so much power right now. This pendulum has swung so far. And we're almost out of time. The window's closing. The minute private equity buys all of our homes, the residential real estate market, we're screwed. We're indentured servants forever. Okay. There goes wealth creation for the average American. So you're right, Lex, it's not a contradiction. It's a tension that is inevitable to get to balance. The reason why people kind of can't figure me out, they're like, well, you're on the left, but you're a capitalist, etc. That's not a contradiction. That's getting to the right balance. And in order to do that, like if you say, well, if we change the system, I'm afraid of change because what if the pendulum swings too far in the other direction, right? Well, then you would be opposed to change at all times. So if you do that, it actually reminds me of the Biden fight, right? So I'm like, guys, he has almost no chance of winning. He stands for the establishment. He can't talk. But then the number one pushback I'd get from Democrats was, Yeah, but what if we change? It's so scary. We don't know about Kamala Harris. What if it's not Kamala Harris? It's so scary. Don't change. And I'm like, yeah, but if you say change might be worse, it also might be better. And you're at zero. Anything is better, right? And right now, in terms of corruption in America, we're at 98% corruption. So we got 2% decency left. Brother, this is when you want change. And so and Lex, if you actually have wisdom of the crowd, just like in supply and demand and how it works in economics, it works the same way in a functioning democracy. You go too far, you come back in. So for example, when Reagan came into office, me and my dad, my family, we were Republicans. Why? At that point, the highest marginal tax rate was at 70%. 70% is too high, right? Now then he brought it all the way down to 28%. That's too low, right? So and that's how the system modulates itself. Already we were headed towards corruption, and because it's the 80s now, we're past 78, magic 78 marker, right? So and even Carter was way more conservative economically than people realize, because we were already getting past it by the time it's in his administration. But the bottom line is, yes, whenever you have real wisdom of the crowd, whether it's in business or in politics, you're going to have fluctuation. You're going to have that pendulum swinging back and forth. You don't want wild swings, communism, corporatism, right? You want to get to, hey, where's the right balance here between capitalism and what people think is socialism?
Yeah, so I guess I agree with most of the things you said about the corruption. I just wish there would be more celebration of the fact that capitalism and some incredible companies in the history of the 20th century has created so much wealth, so much innovation that has increased the quality of life on average. They've also increased the wealth inequality and exploitation of the workers and this kind of stuff. But you want to not forget to celebrate the awesomeness that companies have also brought outside the political sphere, just in creating awesome stuff.
Look, I run a company.
Yeah.
And so I don't want companies to go away. And I don't want you to hate all companies. I think Young Turks is a wonderful company, right? We provide great health care. We take care of our employees. We care about the community, et cetera. And we're building a whole nation online on those principles and the right way to run a company, right? But guys, we're at the wrong part of the pendulum. The companies have overwhelming power and they're crushing us. We're like that scene in Star Wars where the trash compactor is closing in on them. The walls are closing in. We're almost out of time because they've captured the government almost entirely. They're only serving corporate interests. We've got to get back into balance before it's too late. And that's why I care so much about structural issues. So I formed Justice Democrats. So that's AOC, et cetera, right? That's, people know it as the Squad. They know it as Justice Democrats, et cetera. I'm one of the co-founders of that. And my number one rule was no corporate PAC money. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're not allowed to take corporate PAC money. By the way, now Matt Gaetz and Josh Hawley have stopped taking corporate PAC money, and they've become, to some degree, on economic issues, genuine populists. It's amazing. It happens overnight. All of a sudden, they're talking about holding corporations accountable, et cetera. Now, Just Democrats wound up having other problems. They got too deep into social issues, not economic issues.
There's a general sort of criticism of billionaires, right? This idea. Now, you could say that billionaires are avoiding taxes and they're not getting taxed enough. But I think under that flag of criticizing billionaires is criticizing all companies that do epic shit, that build stuff.
Oh, okay. So
that create stuff. That's what I'm worried about. I don't hear enough like genuine, I like celebrating people. I like celebrating ideas. I just don't hear enough genuine celebration of companies when they do cool things.
Okay, so are you right? Not about companies, but about capitalism? Yes. Because, you look at life expectancy 200 years ago, and you look at it now, and you go, wow, holy shit, we did amazing things, right? So, and what happened in the last 200 years? We went from dictatorships more towards democracy, wisdom of the crowd. We went from, serfs and indentured servants and a nobility that holds the land to more towards capitalism, and boom, the crowd is right. Things go really well. The advances in medicine are amazing, and medicine is a great example. So, and on our show, I point all those things out, and I say, look, we hate the drug companies because of how they've captured the government, right? But we don't hate the drug companies for creating great drugs. Those drugs save lives. They saved my life. They saved countless millions upon millions of lives. So the right idea isn't shut down drug companies. The right idea is don't let them buy the government, right? So, and I know we get back into our instinctual shells. So on the left, they'll be, oh, we should get rid of all billionaires. Why? Like, how does that fix the system? Tell me how it fixes the system, and I'm all ears, right? My solution is end private financing. Then you can be a billionaire all you like. You can't buy the government, right? That's a more logical way to go about it. I've never worn an eat the rich shirt, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, you would have eaten FDR, right? And FDR is the best president, most populous president, in my opinion. And so, no, there's wonderful rich people. Of course, there's a range of humanity, right? But you don't want to get rid of the rich. You don't want to get rid of companies, but you also don't want to let them control everything. So, okay, here, I'll give you an example that's really, and that informs a lot of how I think about things, which is my dad. So my dad was a farmer in southeastern Turkey near the Syrian border. No money. In fact, his dad died when he was 6 months old, and so they were saddled with debt, and no electricity in his house, like as poor gets. And he wound up living the American dream. And so how did he do that? What made the difference? Well, what made the difference is opportunity, right? So I'm a populist because my dad was in the masses, right? And the elites say the masses are no good. We're smart, you're not. We're educated, you're not. We at meritocracy, we talk about that. We have earned merit. And if you're poor or middle class, you have not earned merit. Okay, you're useless and worthless. And I hate that. So what did Turkey do back in the 1960s that liberated my dad? They provided free college education. You had to test into it, okay? But the top 15% got a free college education at the best colleges in Turkey. So, and my uncle saved all of our lives when he came to my dad and said, do you like working on this farm? And my dad's like, fuck no, right? It's super hot. It's super hard. It's just, they got to get up at 4 a.m. If they're lucky, the family next door gives them a mule. If they're not, they got to carry the shit themselves, okay? So my uncle told him, work just as hard in school and you'll be able to get a house, a car, pretty girls, etc. So my dad works his ass off, gets into school, and he comes out a mechanical engineer and starts his own company. He creates a company in Turkey, hires hundreds of people. He then moves to America, creates a company here, hires tons of people, right? So do I hate companies? No, my dad set up 2 companies, and I saw how much it benefited people. I saw how much employees would come up to my dad 20, 30 years later in the street and hug him. And they'd tell me as a young kid, your dad's the most fair boss we ever had, and we love him for it, right? That's how you run a company. And he taught me the value of hard work. But the reason I brought it up here is because he taught me, look, like skill and ability is a genetic lottery. So you're not going to just get the rich to win all the genetic lottery. No, there's going to be tons of poor kids and middle-class kids who are just as good, if not better. You have to provide them the opportunity, the fair chance to succeed. You have to believe in them. So this isn't about disempowering anyone. It's about empowering all of those kids who are doing the right thing or smart and want to work hard so they can build their own companies and add to the economy.